In today's episode, we're going to go over base building basics. We're going to talk about how to set up your base using precise measurements, how to set up a few workers to get the base managed all on its own, and this base is actually going to be a mining base, so we'll go over how to set up workers at an actual marker location on the map, so they do things automatically. We're also going to go over some basic defense tricks to help keep your base safe from attacks or wild animals. We're going to talk about how to lift your structure properly so that it has enough support, and then we're going to also set up a huge farm. So let's get started.
The first thing you want to do is you want to go to the resource that you want to be mining that's nearby. So in this particular instance, we want to make sure that we're mining iron. We have our resources. These are all iron nodes. So I know that this is a location that I want to mine at. So in order to make a location marker here, I'm going to press map. I'm going to press F so that we create a marker at the bottom of our feet. I'm going to click on a symbol that I like. In this case, I'm picking all of the blues, and I'm going to say this is going to be iron mine. Okay, so now I know that that's the iron mine. This is the middle. You can see the marker on the screen, and we can use this as a measuring device. And this is important. You have to measure stuff. You can't just willy-nilly send people all over the planet. You have to actually measure where they're going. So when you look at a marker such as that, anything 30 meters will get mined. So I know that this is a good area too, because I see some iron ore over here. And don't worry about the scorpions and stuff. We have a plan for that later. Okay, so let's just make another marker real quick. We're going to move this on up now. So we have our two markers. There's a marker there, and there's a marker here. Now, the rule of thumb is basically a worker will not go any further than 100 meters away from the campfire to mine something at a marker location such as this. So before we even set up our base, we want to make sure that we're within a reasonable distance to where it is that we want to mine. So both of those are looking at about 50 meters, which is good. So that's looking like I could probably build a base anywhere over here. That one's getting a little further away. You do have to think about travel time, what kind of path they're going to be taking and stuff like that too. So it looks like somewhere in here it would be okay to have a base. Another fun fact is when you place down a structure, you don't have to panic too much about making sure there's a bonfire down. The higher the actual HP of the block, the longer it will take before it reaches full durability. It will not start decaying until it reaches full durability. So we can kind of relax with these nightstone blocks and know that they will take quite a bit before they start to decay. So now we got our fireplace down. Put some of this coal on the fire. Now, coal is the best source pretty much that you can use for any campfire. It's remarkably better than wood. So if you are someone who likes to kind of take a break for a while, you definitely want to start making sure you use coal for your bases for a fuel source. Okay, so we have our portal down. We're just going to hold E on it, and then we can rename it. So we're going to call this Iron Forge, because that's the name of this little village that we're going to build. And then we want to rename our bonfire pit Iron Forge. So now we know where it is on the map. Okay. The most important thing after giving it fuel is obviously making sure that we put shelter over it. So all we're going to do is for now, we're just going to snap a pillar here. And we're going to slap a few of these ceiling pieces over the fire. It doesn't matter if it's clipping like that. That's perfectly safe as long as it's 1 high and 4 wide. I'm now going to take my worker and press F8, and this will make my worker stay here. So now she's going to stay here forever until I tell her to move. Open up the campfire, and this is how you would appoint a caretaker. So we're going to choose her. It always is based on distance to the base, so you know which one is closest to your base. Like I wouldn't choose this person because it's 2,900 meters away. So obviously that's somewhere else. So I'm going to choose this farmer right here. I'm just going to hold left mouse button, and now she's assigned to the actual campfire. What does that actually mean? It means she will put fuel on the campfire. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to set acceptable fuel types. And for me particularly, I like to turn everything off except for the fuel type I'm using, which in this case is coal. You can do it however you want to do it. I have found that it's more reliable to make sure that it's one fuel source, like all logs, all branches, whatever. But you do whatever you want to do and whatever works best for you. For me personally, I only do coal, and I'll show you later in the video why I do that. So you also want to make sure that if you go on a craftsman's bench, you make yourself a construction hammer. These are going to come in handy big time for making your life a lot easier. So let's grab one of those. So the next big thing that we're going to do is we got to start getting our foundation figured out. So what you want to try to avoid when you're building your base is you want to try to avoid double stacking as much as possible. Now, I am an efficient kind of builder. I don't really care too much about things looking super pretty, but I want it to at least be nice. If you're someone who likes to build a base that has, you know, railings and all sorts of bells and whistles everywhere, that's totally fine too. But that's not the kind of base we're building today. We're going to build a functional base. So the first thing I'm going to do, hold E on it and go to show area. So now we can actually see the radius of what we have claimed. Now, another thing we're going to look at is how far can we build before the game says we're not allowed to build here. Because if we can't build a certain distance, then we don't want to be there because it's just a waste of space. So like right here, you can already see that we're not allowed to build here. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to pull this back a little bit. And I'm just going to put a block here just so I know personally where that range is. So now the tricky thing here is to make sure that your base is within range of your markers, but it's going to give you as much build space as possible for building, you know, a big base. The other thing you have to think about is when you're making pillars and ceilings, you have to make sure that everything stays within a certain distance in order to have true support. So in order to have support for this base, what we're going to do is we're going to build every 2. So you go pillar, block, block, pillar. Now in order to get our snap point over here where the elevation is different, we're now going to make a ceiling at the top of this one. Block, block. We're going to go 3 over so that we can come back down, and then you go pillar. So again, the math formula is always going to be pillar, block, block, pillar. So what we're going to do is we want walls, or foundations, I should say, on the edge. So what we're going to do is we're going to probably cut it back to here. So I'm actually going to get rid of this. And I'm just going to show you how we can get this foundation to snap perfectly to the edge here. So all we do is we basically just do a ceiling piece, and we make a pillar. And it'll hang, right? So the pillar is hanging there, and then all we do is we just grab a foundation piece and we slap it in. Now we know that this foundation is officially a part of the entire grid, and it's within the same system stack. So if I were to run these all the way across, they'll line up perfectly with the ones there. So you always want to stay connected to the main source grid. So let's get rid of this now, and we're going to build this wall up and double stack it like that. Perfect. So now we have our own edge border, and this will represent our border to our base. So now what we can do is we can take these foundations and we can start double stacking them. We know that it's going to go at least 2 high. Eventually what's going to happen is we're going to basically build this entire thing out so that we have a flush floor to build on, and then we're going to build above that with a farm. Pretty much in a better spot now. So what I did is I made a perimeter of all foundations so that nothing can get into our base from outside. And as you can see, this pig, like, he's not able to get in. If he was, or any enemy for that matter, they were not able to walk up over this. And you just want to check and make sure that you can't walk up over any of this area. That's the first line of defense that we want to have for any base that we make. And the reason for that is when we have an invasion coming, see, like right here, this is actually a weak spot right here because someone could walk over that. We just want to build another cube there, so we're good to go. So the main reason for doing this is because if we have it set up where guys cannot walk in, they're going to have to go where we want them to go. And in this particular instance, what that means is we're going to force any invader, would-be invader, to to go to the front. Now, I built this area a little different. This is basically a simple valve trap box that anyone can make for their base. I highly recommend doing this. This valve trap box will only work though if you do like how I blocked all the other areas off of the base. Because whether you're being invaded and they're going for the bonfire, or if you're just being attacked by a pig or a wolf, they're always going to try to get up to you inside the base, and they're going to find the next path that they can get, which would be this one. The problem here for them is they're going to run into this, which is cornered off, and these are actual traps. So these boxes will lure them in, and they will get trapped. So I'm going to show you exactly how that works. So let me just run up here. I'll run through here, and you're going to see he's just going to pathfind right in there, and he goes into our trap. So now he is forever stuck in the box, so we never have to worry about him ever again. Now there's a lot of empty space under our base. This was an extreme area that I had to build in, and remember, I had to build here because I needed to make sure the campfire was close enough to our iron mine. You have to stay within 100 meters or they will not mine that area, so we're just in range. So I had to unfortunately build the way I did. It's not going to be pretty under here, but we can always tidy it up as we go here and make things a little bit more well adjusted. Mathematically, this is the most sound method to do it that I can find. So you do pillar, cube, cube, pillar, cube, cube, pillar, cube, cube, pillar. However, in the middle of an entire section, so you can see that we have 3 rows of pillars here, 3 rows of pillars there, 3 rows of pillars here, and 3 rows of pillars here. That makes this row in the middle one that we can actually get rid of. So we can get rid of this one. So let's get rid of this. And that is how you create a super cube where you can actually save more space. You should always have piranha pools at any base that you have, because once we load this with fish, it will always generate food. And in order to make sure that these fish, I don't have any in here right now, but in order to make sure that these fish are always being taken care of, what we're going to do is we are going to, oh, looks like Mike's here. What we're going to do is we're going to set this to 60%, make sure we do not maintain the ratio, and we only want to feed them fish. So we will be collecting fish and we will be feeding fish, and that's all we're going to be doing. That is the best way for anything that you're going to be harvesting for animal products. So in terms of carnivores, so these piranhas will eat fish, so they feed themselves essentially, and they will produce fish. So that's the easiest way to do it. And then what we're going to do is we'll end up putting fish in there, and we'll assign someone to work on that, and then you'll always have fish meat at this base 24/7, and you can always take care of the food problem. We're going to actually make a farm up here. You do always want an outhouse too, because you get into fertilizer, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And it also helps with the pleasantries of your people. So we're going to make a granary, and what the granary does is then we assign that same farmer that we had to the granary. So now they'll basically take care of all the farms that we place down in this base, which makes our lives way easier. They will automatically farm everything for us, and you basically want to farm whatever you need. It's up to you, but we're going to set that up right now, so let's do that next. So let's start building a farm on this beautiful, nice, flush top roof. I like to build my farms on the roof because you need to have rain for your farms, and it just makes life a hell of a lot easier. So there's a special way to build your farms if you want to have the most efficient farm, and we're going to talk about that right now. So let's start building one of our good farms. So let's start in one of the corners over here, because we don't want any interruptions while we're building. We don't want it to be too close to the edge, because you kind of get a glitch like this where as we're building, they might start to veer off at a bad angle, and it will start to turn red. So we just want to give ourselves a little bit of buffer on both sides. I wish they would make it a little easier to move the camera while you're preparing for this, but you just kind of have to eyeball it. All right, so here we go. We're going to start snapping these together and hope that they all stay straight. If it's not straight, rip them all up and start over. As you can see, it started straight and it started to go sideways. So this is definitely not an easy task. You have to basically just line it up. I try to use lines on the floor to match it to, but no matter how hard I try, it just always seems to do its own thing. So we're just going to try to line this up a little bit better this time. Okay, that should be good. There we go. That's why you want to give yourself a little bit of buffer on the left there, so that if you do screw up, it's not the end of the world. And then that matched up perfectly, so we can see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's pretty good. Okay, and it doesn't matter how many as long as we have what we're about to do right now. So the next thing we do is we start making a massive square that's open in the middle. We do not fill this square in the middle. Okay, and there's a reason for that, and we'll get into that in just a second. The next thing we do is we double, and then we make another square. Now, the amount of farms that you can make will be dependent on how good your bonfire is. So we're using the best one in the game right now. The better the climate, the easier this is going to be for you. If this was a really cold climate, I would have to have a lot of heaters in this middle zone. If this was a really warm climate, I would have to have a lot of coolers. But if it's really nice and mild, then we can just get away with buffs only. So you always think of your beehives as your buffs. This would basically buff anything in a radius that's around it, and it will make the crops grow much faster. If we could not get the right climates, so depending on what we're growing, like if we're trying to grow cotton or whatever, if it's too cold, then we would take these out and we would put a heater in here, or if it's too hot, we would put a cooler in here. So for now, we're just going to do this. And right next to the portal, we're going to, instead of making a drop box, because we're not really going to be delivering too much here other than one thing, we're just going to place one thing in this box by setting the storage items. And we're going to make it minerals. We're going to turn everything off except for coal ore. That's it. So now what we can do is we have this person right here who is appointed to take care of the base bonfire. We've also set it up to make sure that we only accept coal ore as our fuel type. And then what we do is we bring coal in from another base and we stack this with nothing but coal. And what that means is essentially this bonfire will always use however much fuel is in here. And when you fill one of those massive chests with coal, you're basically making your base last forever. The other thing is, just keep in mind that if you don't log into the game for more than 7 days, your workers will stop working. So the most protection you have is about 7 days of being AFK completely. But if you log in at least once a week, you really have nothing to worry about. What we can do is we can make another bin on the other side if we wanted to. And we could call this exports. And then what we would do is we would basically set it up so that she takes the harvest and puts it inside this box. So if we were harvesting, for example, trees or wood, or if we were harvesting cotton from our farm above, basically anything that we want, we would make a bunch of bins that are designated to what our exports are. So that way when you show up at this base, the only thing you have to do is run up to these bins, grab them all, and then jump right back to the portal. Another thing to think about is you never usually want to craft anything, if you can help it, at another base that is a worker camp. Because if we press J and we look at our defense right here, our fever, which is like our threat for getting invaded by enemies, our fever goes up based on XP earned. So if we're crafting stuff at another base, it's going to generate a lot of fever, which means you're bound to get invaded eventually. So usually what I do is I make sure that all my worker camps just work, harvest, and then export everything to the main base. The main base is where I usually do all of my crafting. So this is basically what the farm should start looking like. Also, I just want to include some other little helpful tidbits. We can make our camera get further away from our character if we go to keyboard and mouse and just increase the camera distance. That can help sometimes just kind of see better. Just want to throw that in there as a fun little tidbit. But as we look around, you can see how the farm really came together. It started to look a lot more versatile. We have a lot of different assets in here, so it should give us a lot of product. And then I was just going to show you the final process of how to get our miner to automatically mine that iron ore. You can see our miners coming back right now from mining ore automatically. And in order to set him up, the only thing we have to do is we just press I. We go to the guy that is mining. So in this case, it's this guy right here, Ironforge Miner. We click on Go to Work. And really all you have to do is set up just a few things. So the first thing I set up was you're going to choose Wild Collection. You're going to choose the location name of the marker. Okay, so this was the name that I gave the marker. Remember when in the beginning of the video I named it Iron Mine? So that's the name of the marker, not the base, the marker. And then you just choose what you want them to do. So we obviously want mining. Unlimited, throw out all tools, discard if they're broken tools, and then he's good to go. The best bases that you can get are ones that control areas next to mines. So you're always getting a resource, and then if it's got a good climate, you can have a nice farm as well. And then you're just going to be making hand over fist for resources, and life will get a lot easier for you. So that's all I got for today. Hopefully that helped. Catch you in the next one.